On today's project, we're going to put an Apple CarPlay kit in my wife's 2016 Camry. Let's get started. So today I'm going to be trying out this Apple CarPlay kit from Carplay&Android. All right, inside the box we have a user's manual, and it has the information on here that says this is for the Toyota Touch2 and Entune2.0 system. We also have the main box in here, and this has a Wi-Fi connection, and then has two different connections that go to your radio. So this does require pulling the factory radio out of the car. Further down in the box, we have a wiring harness, and this should have all the connections that we need to hook this up. We have a USB connector that we can plug into this also, and this port will allow us to connect an iPhone to the stereo, and then that should in turn show up on the screen of the factory radio. And we also have a Wi-Fi antenna in here, and the system uses the Wi-Fi antenna to also connect your iPhone. All right, I'm really excited to see if this is going to work, so let's get to installing. All right, first thing we're going to do is take a pry tool and pry up on this vent. Pop this loose. Lay it off to the side. And if you look down in there, there are two 10mm bolts, and that holds this whole piece in here. There's also some bolts at the bottom. We have to get those out. And to do that, we're going to use the pry tool again. Get under the edge of this pocket in the center console, pull up on it, pull that out. That reveals two screws. Take these screws out. Next, we're going to turn the car to the on position. Not start it, but the one right before it starts. You want to put the shifter, push the brake, put the shifter in neutral. Also going to set the parking brake so we don't roll. Once we have that taken care of, we're going to pull up on the back side of this, and also right around the edge over here, and on this edge, I'm going to pull this loose. There's a white connector underneath. Not sure if you can see that. There's a tab on the bottom. I'm not sure if I can do this with two hands or not. Let me get that done and I'll bring it back. All right, so this has a little tab on the bottom of it. Stick your finger or your thumb up in the back side there and push that down. Pull that connector out, and then that will let you turn this whole center console sideways. All right, next we're going to remove some screws here on either side of this pocket. Looks like there's two more at the top. And next we should be able to pull out on this center pocket, pop it out. Has a couple of connections wired to it. I'm going to set that out of the way, and I'm going to get those wiring connections loose. Once you have those loose, you can set that aside. And if we look back up and under here, there's two more 10mm bolts we got to take out. So once you get there, you got two 10mm bolts on the bottom, two 10mm bolts on the top, and I don't think I can do this and hold the camera too, so I'm going to get that done and I'll bring you back. All right, once you have those bolts out, simply grab a hold of it, pull, and it'll come right out. So we have some wiring connectors here in the back we got to unhook, and I'm going to go ahead and get that done. Let's see if I can do that with the camera. There's one. 2, 3, and 4. It's got 4 connectors in there we're going to unhook. As you can see here in the front, you have some dip switches. There's a table in the manual that tells you how to set these dip switches depending on which version of stereo you have in your Camry. And we have a Pioneer stereo, so it looks like we're going to set them all to the off position except number 6. Now, as you can see here, these are numbered across the bottom, and these are all off by default, so I'm going to flip on number 6. See if I can do this. Next, we're going to plug a wiring harness in. So this wiring harness that came with this is labeled, but it'll only go one way. So the end of this cable that does not have several connectors on it, only has one connector on it, will go right there. Now the other harness is the one that has the USB port on it that you'll be plugging your cable in. I just want to point out, this also has a connector for another external camera. Now this car has a backup camera, but it doesn't have a forward camera. You probably wouldn't use this on a car, but if you were putting this in a truck, you may want a front-facing camera. They are helpful to keep you from backing, or keep you from pulling in and hitting people's tow hitches, posts, and stuff like that when you're parking. All right, so we're going to plug this other connector in. And then the next thing is the Wi-Fi. Now this Wi-Fi antenna has a double-sided tape on the back of the antenna. You can stick this up somewhere in your car if you want. Has a fairly long cable. It's been my experience that Wi-Fi usually works pretty good inside of a vehicle, so I'm going to leave this coiled up and just put it down in behind the radio. Now the other end of this long harness has what's called a T-harness on it, and what this allows you to do is it breaks out certain signals coming from the car to the radio, sends them to the box and back. And how you use this is one end will plug, in our case, into the radio, and the other end, the connection that originally went to the radio, will go to this end. So there's 3 different connectors here, and there's a connection diagram in the manual that shows you where these go. So these will go to the 24 pin, 10 pin, and 28 pin connectors on the radio and on the harness in the car that originally hooked to the radio. There's also a list over here that tells you what they are and where they go. All right, so I got these plugged up, and just for reference, you have one connector close to the driver's side. That gets a T-harness. The top plug on the passenger side gets a T-harness. The bottom plug all the way over on the passenger side gets a T-harness, and the one right next to that, it's of these 3, it's the closest to the driver's side. It does not. It stays plugged in the radio. All right, so at this point, we can stuff all this back into the cubby hole behind the radio, find a place to put it, and then we also want to route this USB plug out somewhere. I'll find a good spot for that. I'll show you where I run that from, and then we can put all this back up in here. So I'm going to do that and put this back up here temporarily so we can test it out and make sure it's going to work. All right, guys, got it set up here to test. So the first thing you want to do is select auxiliary, and that will bring up the car ABC menu. And now all you have to do is plug your phone in. Hard to do one-handed here. Plug your phone in. And just like that, there you go. CarPlay on a non-CarPlay Toyota head unit. So let's see what we got here. Okay, that goes back to here. So there's CarPlay. Not sure what all my wife has on her. Now, I think this will also connect wirelessly. Right now I'm using the USB cable that came out of the unit that we put in. I got that plugged into the phone. I think this will also connect wirelessly. Let me see if I can get that worked out. Also, by the way, to get back out of CarPlay, if you want to go back to your regular stereo, you hit the power button twice. All right, guys, I was able to get it to connect wirelessly also. See, there's no wire plugged in. And I have it up here on the screen. Everything seems to work pretty good. All right, everything seems to work pretty good. This is exciting. I was looking forward to this coming in the mail. Finally got it. I'm glad it's here and it works perfect.